Hello, my fellow tech bro. Hi, Lauren. How you doing?
Good. How's it going, Mary?
Good. I was just thinking about how we've had a nice streak of guests. We had Phil Hall last week. We had John Cute before that, Bethany Lyons. But this week it's just the two of us, which I know people also love. So hi, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, and anyone who wants to join, Mary, do you want to put the link in the
yeah. Give me a minute.
Everything.
I'll post it here now, and I have to hop over in a second to LinkedIn to post it over there. So give me a second for that. But anyone who wants to join, it's just open forum. Talk about anything tech or tangentially tech that you want to talk about. We're not going to get into the news of the new war in the world, except to say that what's been hitting me more and more this week is something that you actually refer to quite often is the war of misinformation and disinformation, and how, like, as we head into the presidential election, which is going to be, closing in on the final months this time next year, like, it's going to be such a shit show. And to me, the whole what's happening in the Middle East is the sign of that. Like, there's no longer Twitter to go to as a reliable source with
I don't think there was Twitter to go to as a reliable source.
I know, but it's like maybe like that final peg where you could at least find some verified people, verified voices. A lot of that was bullshit, but still, to me, it just feels like that final, where are we going to find any information?
Well, there's no good. Everything's made up, right? I mean, it was Stephen Colbert used to joke about truthiness. And I think Jon Stewart had the thing too, but yeah, this was 15 years ago or so that they did it. And a lot of it was about the Iraq War and Afghanistan and just other things that, float out into the ether. And now, I mean, everyone is their own, their own investigative beat reporter. Everyone is their own whatever. Like, I see people all around looking at, here's the trajectory of this missile, and here's what. And I'm like, what do you people do all day?
Yeah, and there's an element of that there's like a beauty in the democratization of information, but like we've hit a point where it's like, who do you trust anymore? And yes, to your point, we do. It's been a long time since we've been able to trust our government or any government official sources. But I don't know. It's going to be wild. It's going to be wild. Was the last election a TikTok election? It wasn't. Was it? TikTok was just taking off.
No, there's still TikTok around, but it's more prevalent now for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about the TikTok. I stay away from TikTok.
Yeah.
I'm a big data privacy person, and I don't, people are always, the Chinese Communist Party is going to have your data if you use TikTok. I'm like, well, if you just use Twitter or whatever else, how many other governments out there have your information? Plenty, including ours, which
the
ability to tax you and stuff, whereas China's doesn't if you're in the US. So
no, it's I check it out. I go on there just to be in the know, but I'm not a TikToker. But
we were talking earlier, and a few people are saying hi. If anyone wants to jump on, feel free to jump on the link, Mary.
Yeah. You talk for a minute, Lauren, while I go and put the link over on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah. No, you were saying earlier, like one of our earlier shows we had this year, you were talking about, or we had TikTok influencers and and people who use it professionally. I haven't checked back in on that, but I have seen more like job postings or people who talk about tech stuff, at least trying the TikTok to use it as a go-to-market channel, get conversions. But I still think it's, pretty nascent in what people are doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's maybe even I know you're a lot younger than me, but it's even like that younger generation than you, right? To a certain degree as well, that owns it.
It's all the Gen Zs, and they've got. Do you know about the latest? So I watched also the Jewel documentary, because every tech company now that blows up or has a controversy gets a documentary made, and then they have a docudrama that comes on shortly after. I mean, we saw this with Theranos, we saw this with WeWork, Uber has one.
Yeah.
And, now Jewel has one.
We're waiting on the high touch one.
Oh yeah, we're waiting. Yeah, when's the snowflake one?
We can only wish.
They can interview me on any of these. but I'll be like, I'll have that like the vocal thing where it mixes your voice, and I'll be in the black, like, anonymous source over here, if I'm even welcome. But the Jewel one was interesting. But all the kids today they're on. It's called Zyn, ZYN. And there's another as well, Vobo or Verbo or something. And I mean, it's basically I bought one just to see what it looks like and what it is. And it's basically, it's like nicotine, but it's in a pouch. And, it's not like chewing tobacco or anything like that, but it's basically goo in a pouch that, you just put in your lip or put in your tongue or whatever.
It's gum. It's basically gum.
Well, yeah, you don't chew it though, but it's
Okay.
just goo. It's like they, if they wanted to make gum, it probably would have cost them more. So they just made goo and put it in a pouch, and it has nicotine in it. And that's the new thing. So we'll see where that goes, and we'll see how regulation keeps up with that, because there's going to be some 9-year-old out here zinning or whatever at some point soon. So I'm excited to see where that goes, because
Lauren
that
Bell is bringing us the latest trends.
yeah, no, and all like the here in New York, all like the little junior banker kids and like the 24-year-old SDRs and those types of people, they're all about the Zen.
Are you an investor in Zen? Full
No,
disclosure.
I'm not an investor in Zen. They're not their own company, I don't think. They're owned by some larger entity. But yeah, that's where we're going now. Now the Jewel's made its way through.
I saw someone chimed in here. I can't see the name, who said it's a great documentary. I'll check it out. I think it's on Netflix, right? But I haven't watched it. Want to say hello to Soren as well. Hey, Soren, join if you'd like. And also to Ramona, who was on last week. Hi, Ramona. So what's new in your world this week, Lauren?
I'm out here just like, one of my favorite things is, so, the 2 conferences this week. One was, DBT had their Coalesce conference out in San Diego. I don't know how many people came. I mean, I guess they'll publish the number at some point. I'm guessing it's like a few thousand. But the real conference is Gitex, which is it was in Dubai, and they have 170,000 people show up. And I don't think most Americans, or even most American tech people, understand how like big this is. Like, this is like 17 times larger than like the Snowflake or like Databricks conference. And it's because it's in Dubai, it's all over the top.
So who's there? What is there? What niche? Is every niche there? Everyone?
There's a bunch of niches there. It's bigger than CES even, I think. And I don't know, maybe there's a trip in the cards for next year to go to Dubai and see what's going on there, if I'm allowed in.
Look out for the documentary, the Tech Bros take on, what is it, DTX in Dubai?
Gitex, Gitex.
Okay, got it. This is going back a couple weeks, but there was the news that came out of the Grace Hopper conference, which is historically a conference for women in tech, specifically, I think, programmers, that was, had a very high attendance from men this year who crashed it, I guess, looking for jobs. Did you hear about this?
Yeah, I saw all about this. And so I know Grace Hopper. I've like given to them in the past.
Yeah,
I went to their events a few years ago. But yeah, I don't really have any affiliation with them at all. But yeah, they opened up their conference, and a number of the attendees there were men, and were using it as like, to go around and try to find a job because they've been laid off. And, a lot of people were not happy about that. And I don't know, it's interesting, like, because it is for anyone to go to, right? But I mean, it's like a women's conference. So, I mean, I guess a bunch of people like put down like, non-binary or something, when that wasn't the case. And, it was became just an open job fair where there were as many men or more men, I guess, than women.
And if anything, it's more of a sign of mostly a sign of the craziness of the times economically.
Oh yeah. And like, we have even more stuff, like even this week, like Tesla had a bad quarter. We'll see how that does. I mean, I've always been pretty bearish on Tesla in general. I mean, I've driven their cars before. I don't own one. I don't own a car because I live in New York. But you know, they are going to have some fundamental problems coming their way. The hype phase is over, and they're going to have to fundamentally pivot this business to being something that can produce units profitably, and expand to a larger percent of the population than where they currently are. I mean, people own Teslas all over, but there's still a lot of concentration on the coasts and within the EV charging networks. And there's a whole lot of interesting stuff. If you're into like geospatial data and those types of things, there's like the grid of Teslas and charging stations is a very interesting problem, and it's historically been like rampant with like, I don't know, like scams, I guess. Like, there's diesel generators backing some of these chargers, even though like they're pitching it as like environmentally conscious. People have gotten, up in arms about that before, that, you go to the charging station, but what's powering the charging station is a bunch of diesel generators. There's all kinds of interesting stuff.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, the Cybertruck, we'll see what happens with that. I mean, It looks like a big flop. It may not be long-term, but they have like, I don't know. I think it looks horrendous. I think that it's not like a consumer-friendly product in the way that it visually looks or drives. But we'll see what happens. And so they're hitting some headwinds, and it's a pumper stock. The Tesla TSLA, and we'll see what happens with that. But there's some headwinds there, and I think to the other point, like, I mean, Convoy is another one, right? Like, you look at some of these.
Before we get to Convoy, I'm going to tell you, I'm a recent owner of an EV, and in a city where like Teslas are like a Honda Civic, like half the population has a Tesla. But I recently got an EV, and just to give an example of how poor, even in a city like Los Angeles, the charging infrastructure is. I live in an apartment complex that has 12,000 residents. It's its own town, 12,000 residents. There is one EV charger. One
on the premise.
Yeah. On the premise, yeah. There's none like super close by that are accessible, affordable. Surprisingly, you can figure out how to get it. I think most people who have EVs must have chargers at work or something, but one for 12,000 residents, it's wild.
You can get them installed in your own place usually, if you have your own garage or your own.
Yeah, but I mean apartment complex, so lots of people in cities. So in New York, you'd have to plug it in, throw the cord down 4 stories or whatever.
I think I mean that's part of the problem here, right? You're not going to street park it here in New York. I mean, I don't know, someone will take the rims off or whatever, or something. But if you want to garage park it, some of the garages have chargers. But I mean, this is a question about like TAM and serviceable market, because if you like the Honda Civic, anyone can own a Honda Civic, right? Like I know very wealthy people who drive some of the wealthiest people I know, like their cars, Corollas and Civics, right? Because they don't need to be flashy, and they it's just not their style. But then even someone who's lower income needs a car can have one of them too. So this whole grid thing, it's not a matter of, I know it's going to get built because I know there's enough demand for EVs overall in the US, mostly talking about the US here, US market. I know it's going to grow, but the question is like, Tesla has given some big numbers and big projections historically. And, I think it's catching up to them now that things aren't going to happen as quickly as they wanted. They have pressure from, the big auto manufacturers. Everyone has their own EV now. So, we'll see. That's. I don't know. I'm excited to watch this unravel because I know it's going to unravel.
When they lowered their price the price of the vehicles earlier this year, they started to lose the luxury factor. So it's like, it's like having a Coach purse now. You can get one at the mall. And then the price of used Teslas is actually really good. If you're looking to buy one, it's a good time to do it. So no, it's fascinating. Before we move on to talk about Convoy, one more thing from a viewer here whose name I cannot see once again, said that they attended GHC when in grad school. So if you want to join and tell us about it, that would be awesome. And hello also to Push Pendra, a new viewer who I haven't seen here before. So yeah, let's talk Convoy, which announced, was it yesterday, that they're closing up shop?
Basically closing shop. And it's these freight. There's a bunch of different logistics and freight companies that have come out in the last couple of years. Flexport is one. There's Convoy. There's a few others, and they all do things a little bit differently. But like basically, they're all fighting over the same amount of like shipments and parcels, etc. And they're all like extremely, extremely valued in the billions, right? For what's very much a commodity business. And yeah, Convoy has said that they're just closing up shop completely. Flexport, if anyone's been around watching it, like they have a bunch of I don't know, like drama is the best word for it, because their CEO left a year ago, and he's still in the picture. He's an executive chairman, but now he's back, and they got rid of the CEO they've had the last year. That CEO who just got the boot, the guy who came in before, like they're having these online spats. And like the guy who got fired basically, has changed his work experience on LinkedIn to education from his time at Convoy. And then, they're going back and forth with barbs over like, oh, the last CEO, like, he didn't know, like, he didn't even know how many job requisitions are opened, and we got to stop hiring employees. And it's been funny because these businesses are fundamentally broken. Like there aren't actually like, you can use data science, and you can use, and you can buy space and buy shipments and play a game like, and try to arbitrage like availability and things like that. In the same way that like, you can bid on anything.
Yeah,
but
so
like
taking the buying model and applying it to the actual.
Yeah, right. I mean, they're like the only way they work is like, if they're basically operating kind of like, a trading firm or like a hedge fund would, like figuring out, route planning and trying to do this as cost efficiently as possible in something that fluctuates up and down and has high seasonality, even volatility day to day. And like the thing is, like Convoy, they're not paving new roads to get from point A to B. Like it's the same road, that something's going on. And like, for the ocean freight type stuff that like some of these other players get into, like it's the same ocean lines. Like it's the same, it's none of this is like they come up with all this like data science and type stuff. And these,
there's only so much optimization you can do. Yeah. Like,
yeah, but like, and you can get like, you can, make things marginally better. But you're not actually changing anything. And both companies, Flexport and Convoy, they are different companies, but play in similar space. Huge revenue losses for year over year from 2021 to 2022. And a lot of that is because e-commerce is like slowed up a little bit, or it didn't grow as much as people thought it would. There's fewer shipments like moving around in the way that they had predicted for. So, and the funny thing is that like one of the investors in Convoy, I guess, is realizing now that like, oh yeah, they're getting wiped out. Like they're basically, their investment's worth nothing. They're not even getting anything back because Convoy's going to sell their technology, it sounds like, and sell that and find a buyer for someone to buy the technology, like the bare bones. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I don't know the story behind Convoy. We don't have to get into this if you don't know it, and I'll research it afterwards if you don't. But were they a pandemic unicorn, sort of?
Yeah, they're a pandemic. I mean, I think they were founded before that, but yeah, I mean, they're typical pandemic type play. And then all these, they all fight with each other. Like it's just big race to the bottom. So, everyone's fighting over the same couple of like marginal points. It doesn't really work, right? And so they're out of the picture, and we'll see what happens. They're up in Seattle, I believe. I think they're big Seattle and West Coast, and so I don't know. A number of their employees aren't going to be around anymore, and they're a big snowflake shop. I know that, and we'll see what happens with I mean, I'm pretty bearish on Snowflake. On what they're doing. Like a lot of their bigger companies are optimizing. A lot of their bigger customers are getting their costs down. Here, Convoy is an example of a adopter of Snowflake over several years. They've used the platform well, and they that's just going to be revenue that seems to be.
The question is, were they a DBT?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't read up enough to know. Let's bring up Ramona. Ramona was here last week as well. Hi, Ramona. Welcome.
Hi.
Let's give you a chance to. I don't think we did a proper introduction last week.
Oh, please, let's keep the introduction.
Okay. So, well, yeah, you're from Canada. You're a data person. We don't have to.
Yes, I live close to Toronto.
I love Toronto.
Yes, I was there this week a few times for some events. Including last night. It's funny, you were speaking about Grace Hopper. I was the viewer who went to Grace Hopper long time ago in grad school.
Oh, nice.
And I went last night for an event, a women hack event. So it's a networking and kind of a job fair for women. And there were men there. So obviously we've noticed and we started asking, is it okay if I go in this direction with the conversation? I don't want to hijack anything.
No, it's town hall. Whatever's on your mind.
I really love what was talked earlier, right? So I love listening to Lauren, and she provides so much info that it's so easy to just grab it from her and not spend the time to... So thank you, Lauren. It's always a pleasure.
Sure.
So we were asking the organizer, what's with the men? I mean, we didn't want to get into stereotyping, right? So nobody knew, and it was the same assumption, I guess, like for GAC, that maybe non-binary, but being women, so we are always minority. We don't want to become ourselves stereotyping, right? So I think it's a tiptoeing and very gray line there, so we don't know. But
this was like at what was the event? It's a job event.
Yes, like networking, right? Employers come there, and but I'm not even sure if I want to speak to that on an open platform, right?
It's getting a lot of tech employees have been laid off. And...
Yes, exactly. So
women and minorities have been disproportionate.
Yeah, yes, and a friend of mine who's never attended any such event said, "Oh, there are no men events, right?" And of course there are no men events because they are the majority. They don't need their own events, right? And going back to Grace Hopper, so I don't know how it is these days. It's been a while since I attended, but it was beautifully organized, and I think there is money a lot. There was money a lot and sponsoring, and it felt good to be surrounded by female mentors. And actually, this is a topic that I'd never encountered growing up in Europe. So I was born and raised in Romania. I think you had a guest at some point from Romania. So speaking to this, and when I went to school, I did computer science and math. We were more female in the classroom than guys. And when I came to Canada, I came to U of T on a scholarship to do grad school. So suddenly I hear that we have monthly women events, no men allowed. And it was very confusing for me because I did not grow up in such an environment where women were minority, not in tech, right? So then I've learned that this is the situation in North America, and then we have our own conference and Grace Hopper and
Yeah.
etc. So
I send my daughter to an all-girls school, public, but all-girls STEM focused, and she was the one who opted for the STEM focus, which I'm glad about, so that she can support me in my old age, hopefully. The economy has improved by then. But what I wasn't prepared for was when I tell people, especially people from other countries, just in conversation, when I say I send my daughter to an all-girls school, they tend to suddenly think that I'm culturally or religiously very conservative, which for me, it's the opposite. It's like maybe
the opposite,
into sort of progressive research, which shows the benefits for girls of being in the all-girl environment at that particular time of development, social, emotional, intellectual. But yeah, these questions are a lot. And I find myself having to kind of get on the defensive and explain, no, it's not that I'm either anti-male or religiously conservative. But yeah, there's a lot more nuances to these questions than we sometimes like to say or present or think. So
no, absolutely. I know where I live here in Waterloo, we have two big universities and a big college. So University of Waterloo is top one. I think it's even better than U of T when it comes to math. So they organize these math clubs, and I know my daughter was going there, and most of the you could hardly see another girl, or it's just boys, and she was exasperated because they were just talking about games and whatever. I don't even remember the games. She was not interested in that, and they were disruptive. But even that, it's a lot of cultural influence, right? And I don't know, we are surrounded by a lot of stereotypes, and we try not to perpetuate them, but they are here because a lot of data points in that direction. So
yeah. Oh yeah, to me it's powerful to hear your perspective, and our previous Romanian guest, Patrica, just explaining how, having grown up in the environment, even going back, without aging you, going back a couple of decades where you were in truly an environment of either gender parity or even more women in math and science. And it's got to be shocking to come into either the Western European or the North American.
I don't know how much she explained, I don't remember exactly all the details, but we had to go through exams to go to university. So to get into a computer science program, I had to go to pass 3 exams, and they were all math. So essentially, if who was good in math and you had to do calculus, algebra, and geometry, then it's based on the marks that you would get in those exams. So it's just like that, it's based on the marks. So we were, I guess, more studious. I don't know. It's yeah. I can elaborate, but then I think there are more interesting things. Yeah,
I had a moment in a meeting this week where it's astonishing when you stop and listen how many women, even like advanced, working in industries like tech, will throw out from time to time the comment, "I'm not good with numbers," or "I'm not good with math." That happened in a meeting this week. A woman who, like, clearly from everything she was saying, the position she's in, is very good with numbers and math, was just like, "I'm not a numbers person." And I wanted to like reach into the Zoom and like shake her and say, "Stop saying that." And I think in my entire educational and professional career, I've never heard a single man say, "I'm not good at math" or "not good at numbers." I don't know if either of you have, but I haven't. Like,
probably not. No.
I was teaching at U of T for almost a decade, and I was teaching computer science, and I was teaching database and soft-eng. And the statistic there was, if we have 10% female students in the classroom, it's a success. And a lot of I have mentored several of the female students, even male students, but female students would reach out, and they could connect, right? They wanted to see somebody there who is a woman, who understands the struggles of being surrounded the men and being frightened, and not physically, but the boys were always computering and just intimidating. Sorry, that's a better word. So it was, and I could relate to that, because even though I did my undergrad and we were almost 50-50, we were intimidated by the colleagues, the male colleagues in classroom. They were always jacking up all the labs and the computers. So obviously this is also a long time ago. So yes. So we didn't have personal computers. We could not afford them. And anyways, yeah.
So somewhat related, a book that everyone should read, including the two of you if you haven't, came out a couple weeks ago by a longtime employee of Amazon. I think her name is Christy Coulter, called Exit Interview. And she wrote sort of a tell-all about her, I think it was decade, maybe a bit more than a decade at Amazon, and being a woman, who came in at a high level and then was trying to rise higher. And it's a powerful kind of page turner book. I think you'd both love it. I'm surprised we haven't heard more about it. I'm also not sure how she managed to get it past the lawyers to get this book published, because it tells just so many damning things about the internal culture at Amazon. But there's this one moment, without giving too much of a spoiler, it's about 2/3 of the way through the book, where she explains a lot about how she came in as a high level manager and was then in very high, increasingly high level managerial roles. And, but always playing that game as a woman of like being sort of trying to placate everybody and being nice and almost like a caretaker and mediator, and, not being able to just lay down the law because you have to be nice as a woman. And then at some point in her career, many years in, she had to basically in a meeting raise her voice. And from that point on, it was like she went from being the nice, competent manager to being the bitch. And she tells it in such a powerful, well-documented way. And just, I think most women, especially the higher you go, can relate to that of like, what role, we're all playing a role in the professional environment, right? It's not our natural personalities, and trying to navigate that. And, I don't know, I've gone through phases where I've never tried to become one of the bros, except for on this show. But, where you kind of play around with being more like, playful and cracking jokes. But
and
if
approachable, you're one of them, yes.
So absolutely powerful read. I bought it on Kindle, giving my money to Amazon. But and I might reach out to her and see if we can get her on the show. Who knows? She might say yes. So
that would be awesome. Yeah, I made a comment this week. I don't want to say. I can tell you in a DM who I made a comment to. It one of the podcasts that I frequent, and I just noticed that there is alternation between a female guest and a male guest, and I was very appreciative of that, because I don't really see that across the male dominating podcasts. And the host of the podcast was shocked by my comment, because he told me that he doesn't make a conscious effort to that. It's just the guest happened to be like that. So that made me appreciate even more, right? Because the person genuinely wants. Laura knows who I'm talking about, but I don't know how to communicate with you, and even on Twitter, I don't know how to text you or anything. So
you can have. I'll give you my info after the.
Can you say the podcast name? I'd love to know, because I need a podcast.
So if I give you one hint, Lauren will know who the person is. So you appear frequently in pictures on beer outings.
Huh.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot of people. Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I will. Chris Tubb.
Yeah.
I said it.
I don't. What's the name of the podcast?
Oh, I said the name of the host.
Christoph, is it?
Chris Tubb.
Oh, Chris Tubb. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I didn't know he had a show.
Yeah, he just started this summer.
Okay.
So yeah, it's
Chris isn't here today, but he's getting the shout out nonetheless. Let's say hi also to Val. Hey, Val.
James is there, so I think. Okay, I hope Chris. I don't think Chris will be upset with me for saying that, because it's really it's
free promo. It's great.
Yeah, it's
and it's a compliment. And let's say hi to Anne as well, Anne Stoltzman, who says that she totally relates to that. I think she's referring to what I was saying about Christy Coulter's book. And Anne, feel free to join. You've joined before. Anne is a data analyst at Rivian. Getting back to our discussion of EVs.
I'm excited. If we were talking about Tesla earlier. I mean, people always compare Tesla and Rivian, but they're two completely different companies. And people say, "Oh, Rivian's for trucks and Tesla's for cars." But there's a lot more to that story with what's going on with Rivian. If anyone wants to join.
I've never driven the Rivian. I'd like to, but and you see them more and more here in LA. I saw there's one that looks kind of like an Escalade, or maybe like a big, and slightly ugly Range Rover. But the one you see more often here in LA is the pickup for sure.
Well, the thing with these aesthetics around these cars, like everyone calls the Cybertruck ugly. Like I think it's ugly, but that's because my base for like what a car should look like or a truck or whatever, this is different than that. And I mean, there was even the Volkswagen Bug, like people used to pick on that, but it had, it was very popular for a while. What was the other one? The PT Cruiser. People like to joke about that one.
Yeah, I liked it at first. Yeah, but I think everyone can.
But now everyone's like, all right, well, we're used to it. So we'll see if the Cybertruck.
The Mini Coopers have stuck around. The younger generation loves the Fiat. Like when I ask my daughter and her friends, the Fiat 500, like, what car would you like? They're like, oh, I want a mint green Fiat.
That's a little pricey, isn't it?
Yeah, they're pricey. Yeah, for sure. But you guys are both in cities where you can, I don't know exactly where you are in terms of, likely it's Canada, you can take public transportation everywhere. You can.
Yeah, so I used to live in Toronto and I never had a car. I never even had a driver license. And when I moved here, I was forced to, but I gave up my car last year. So I'm just using the public transit. And yeah, it's so, it's not at the Toronto level or New York City, but it's really good. And mainly having so many students, like when the school is in session, I think half the population here is just students. So they use it a lot. So it's just getting really, really good.
Yeah.
I'm curious about, you said earlier you were at Toronto, University of Toronto, teaching database and data stuff there. I'm always curious, were a lot of your students staying in Canada after they graduated, or did a lot of them want to come to New York or Silicon Valley? And how did that kind of all work? Because I've heard different stories from a lot of people up there. Some people say, no, you have to go to the US. If you want to go back to Canada, you can go back in a couple of years, but you have to do it. Other people say, no, there's enough good stuff here. How did your students kind of think all that through?
Spot on, Lauren, and really good question. Well, my data is skewed, right? Only from those that I kept in contact or what we would hear further down the road. But they all dreamed about Silicon Valley, right? U of T gives you a very good education, but the money was not really here in Canada, and there wasn't enough startup development or, where I live here, it was BlackBerry. So BlackBerry was still going on, and they would get a lot of good people. Then also in 2007, Google opened their office here in town, which started with 7 people, and now it's the biggest hub, I think, in Canada. So they all came, one by one. So they brought a lot of talent, and but still, it's not the same. It's not the same money value, right? And what I've noticed, and this is a conversation going on in the city, a lot of international students are coming to the universities here or the college, and use their degree here as a ramp up to move to US for the green card and stuff, because Canada has a different immigration policy than US. So if you I think if you get a degree here and you work for a year, you immediately qualify for the residency, like the equivalent of the green card. So, and after that, having that, you enter in a different situation regarding work in US. So, there is whatever the NAFTA agreement, how it's called now, I forget. And as a Canadian, there is a different kind of visa to work in US. So it's much easier to get, and so unfortunately they are using the system and overcrowding the city, and it's a whole mess with the rental places and whatnot. So just the ramp up to move to US eventually. So they don't really want to stay here, and it's economics is like that. So I don't know, Lauren, if my rambling answered your question.
No, it's fine. It's interesting because I mean, like even now, like Shopify has always been touted as like the big Canadian company, and like they've been doing well, and they will continue to do well. They may be past their heyday, but they're in the mix.
Yeah, I've been to their office here in town. They closed it now, but they were organizing events for girls in STEM actually. So yeah, and then they decided to go remote. So yeah, I think there is a big incubator around here. So they promote that a lot, and a lot of the money for the incubators are coming from Lazaridis, the BlackBerry original brains. So a lot of that money is brought back into the community. So yeah.
Just a quick comment here, getting back to Rivian's from Anne, who points out that they have the truck, so that's the R1T, and the SUV, which I did see the first one recently, which is the R1S. I've got to remember those names, R1T and R1S.
Are you going to upgrade to Rivian next? Is that your next?
Maybe. The pickup would be nice, You can always use a pickup out here in LA. Before we wrap up, ladies, bros, I should say, we didn't really talk about Coalesce. I know none of us were there, but the DBT's conference this week, did anybody hear anything interesting? All I heard was that, attendance is lower, and like the hype, it was a very hyped conference for a while in its short heyday, that, its heyday is over. But did you all hear about any amazing talks or anecdotes coming out of San Diego this week?
I saw some pictures from the Sekoda team, and that's it. But they're
a Toronto company.
They're Canadian.
Yes. They came out. Yeah. So, Lauren, this DBT is one of your favorite topics.
I think it's the most overhyped, unnecessary sprawl creator. I mean, I understand why people use it, and I've used it, and you can use it. One of the things that, I have a couple of people, Lauren's spies out in the industry, but I know a few people who were there this week, and I don't know, someone was texting me like all the, slides of like, we have 85,000, SQL transformations at blah, blah, blah company. We have 30,000 here. And it's just, showing off a lot of sprawl, which I don't think is a good thing, but like, it's their business model. Like, they want you to make more models, like SQL sequences, to make their product stickier. And if you're on their cloud product, then charge you on it. But, is it really worth it? Like, no. And I think that like another big one here, always gets thrown by the wayside. And if you see, I knew Joe Reese pretty well. I talk to him all the time. and I talked to a couple other people.
We've hit the name dropping section of the show.
Yeah. And very important. But data modeling and like how much companies aren't doing any modeling or they're doing it wrong. And I don't know. I think a lot of that can be exacerbated by DBT and people not knowing what they're doing. Leaping before they look or whatever. So
I got a few texts from Coalesce this week.
There's face painting
from people. Yeah, no, from people attending Coalesce saying that there was a lot of talk about your recent blogs, Lauren. So if anyone should have been there giving the keynote, maybe it should have been you.
Someone told me I should make an anti-conference, or like all the cool kids go to prom, but then like all the nerds or whatever have their anti-prom. I should have an anti-conference. I'm not going to egg anybody on over there. Otherwise, I'll have more nonsense to deal with.
Yeah. Well, maybe things to come in 2024. TBD. All right. Great show. Thank you, Ramona. You're an official co-host now. Week in a row, so come back anytime. And we'll be getting a nice lineup of guests for the next couple of weeks, and we'll see everybody hopefully next Friday.
I love being here. It's a real tech bros.
Love it.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.